yourselves enrolled in the into the course. So all you need to do is you need to go to www.edureka.in, wherein what you'll be seeing is you'll be seeing under the trending technology courses, you'll be seeing a tab for Android for beginners. If you click on this button, what I can do is, which I just do, so I have clicked on this button. Once I do click on this button, you can see what the course is offering for you. Here, this is a 6 weeks course for you, and we have divided this complete course in 6 weeks. So what we'll be doing is, we'll be during the first weeks, I'll tell you about the Java fundamentals that are needed to get started with the Android application development. Then moving on with the second week, I'll be exploring more fundamentals about Java, like inheritance, polymorphism, and then also we'll be creating a first Android Hello World application. Moving on with the third week, I'll tell you about the various layouts in Android, their usage, and also cover the widgets part in Android. I'll just take a spotlight here, and then we'll be moving on to the fourth week. Here in the fourth week, we'll go more advanced into the widgets part, and also talk about data persistence, because this is an important concept in Android. When we talk about data persistence, this is an important concept in Android. Then moving on onto the fifth week, what we'll be doing is we'll get to know more about the Android widgets, and similarly we'll be also talking about creating multiple activities and also the data communication between the activities. Then in the sixth week, we'll be also talking about the data storage, and also look at the media player and the video player APIs in Android. So this is a complete 6 weeks course. After the completion of this course, what everybody would be able to do is they'll be having a project to be created all by themselves. And after the successful completion of the project, we'll be reviewing those projects, and we'll be assigning various we'll be actually giving you various gifts on the basis of the projects that you have made. So this is the complete course that we have for all of you here. And after the successful completion of this course, you'll be able to get a new project created all by yourself. So this is about the course. Now let's move on to the presentation. So this is today what I'll be covering is I'll be covering Android for beginners. So what will be what is exactly Android? What is it does? So the first question that I have for all of you here is, I have a poll question for all of you here. Which phone do you use an Android phone here? So all you have to do is you have to cast your votes on the poll window here. How many of you use an Android phone? Because that is something which I am interested in knowing about, because that is something which will be telling me about your interest in Android application development. So I have got around 89% of the votes. All right, so I have got majority of the responses from all the people. So I'll just close this. So majority of the people have got an Android phone with themselves, and they, if I talk about Android phones, you might be going on to the Google Play to download various applications. You might be using multiple applications on your phones. So this is the feature that Android gives you. So it gives you an Android application development feature. Now I'll be talking about how you will be going about developing applications on Android. So this is a demo class for all of you to gain some insight into the Android application programming. And we have a batch starting from 15th of September, which you people can enroll into. And this is a completely online program wherein you'll be supported on Skype, and you can have the support on emails as well. And we'll be having 6 classes during the weekends, wherein we'll be teaching you the various concepts, and we'll have the online classes wherein we can have one-to-one interaction. You can write your queries, you can write your posts on the chat window, and we can interact. Even I'll be allowing you to speak, since this is a free demo class and we have majority of the people joining in. So all the people will be on mute, and this is going to be the pattern that will be followed for this webinar. And as if you have any questions, any queries, you can just write it on the chat window. So let's begin with the presentation that I have for all of you here, which is the Android for beginners. So the agenda that we have for the presentation is, we have distributed this presentation into 4 phases. During the first phase, we'll be talking about the Android overview. Then we'll be talking about the main building blocks of any Android application. Then we'll be talking about the very first Android application, how you can build your first Android application, and then we'll take more into the first phase 4. So let's give you an overview about Android. So before I begin with the Android overview, I have a poll question for all of you here. Does anybody know which was the first Android powered device here? So you can see, all of you can see here the poll question on your windows. Which one is the very first Android powered device available to all of you? So is it the HTC Hero? Is it the HTC G1? Is it the Motorola Droid? So you can all cast your votes here. Here I have a question from Rishabh Jan here. Is it a weekdays or a weekend class? So we have both weekdays and weekends classes, Rishabh. So you can enroll in anyone. So I think majority of the people are voting. Shubham has asked me a question. Is there any offline classes? Shubham, this complete course is online only, but we also have access. We also give you an opportunity for the offline classes, so you can enroll into those. So I think majority of the people have casted their votes here, and majority of the people are going with Motorola Droid. The answer to it, the question that I had asked was, it is the HTC G1, which was the very first Android powered device. It was running on Android OS 1.5. So that is the correct answer to it. So let's go to the Android overview now. So what exactly Android is? Does anybody, if I go and ask what is Android? So what is, if I talk about Android, it is an open software platform for mobile application development. It is not just an OS, it is a complete stack of an operating system, the middleware, the various applications that are housed in the Android OS, and it is the OS which is powered by the Linux operating system. And the application development for the Android is in Java, and the complete Android setup is actually governed by the Apache 2 licensing. Let me quickly tell you what is when we talk about Android application development, we have an Android stack that we need to take care of. So as you can see, the complete Android stack is divided into 5 layers here. At the base is the Linux kernel. Above that we have the hardware abstraction layer. Above that we have the various libraries and the Android runtime that we have. Then we have the application framework. Then we have the applications. So I'll go with this process, I'll go bottoms up. So when I talk about the Linux kernel, so this is the base of the stack and it is the kernel. It includes the various memory management programs like the security settings, the power management software, and other hardware drivers that we have at this level. So drivers are the program that control the hardware devices here. Then the next level of software, next level in the Android stack includes the libraries. You can think of libraries as a set of instructions that tell the device how to handle different kinds of data. If I talk about I might be having to handle different kinds of data. So these are the libraries that help me handle the different kind of data, the SQLite browser, the Surface Manager, and then we have the runtime here. Very much similar to the Java virtual machine of this is about all the people who might be interested in Java and who have some knowledge about Java. We have the Java virtual machine, we have the JVM or the Java virtual machine. Similar to the Java virtual machine, we have the Android DVM, which is the Dalvik virtual machine, which gives you the runtime environment to every application. Above that, we have the application framework. This is the application framework that we application developers generally work with. So we have the activity managers, the window managers, the content providers, the view systems, and we have the notification managers, the package managers and all. And this is the complete set of applications that a normal user interacts with. Here it is the complete system applications that a normal user interacts with. I have a question here from Lokesh Kumar here. He says, what does Dalvik means? It is just the it was developed by a person whose name was who resided in some place, and it was just the name of the place that he was, so he named it Dalvik. It has nothing to do with any meanings or something. It is just the naming convention that, like Java happened by Java beans, so it is like a similar kind of naming convention that is followed for Dalvik. So this is the complete Android stack that we have. As you can see here, we have the bottom three layers are written in C or assembly language. So I had a question from Siddharth, what is ASM here? So C or assembly language is the term that I have used here, and the above two layers are written in Java, as you can see here. So this is governed by the Java classes. And now we have the licensing. So all these four layers are governed by the Apache 2 licensing, and this bottom layer is governed by the general public licensing that we have. I have a question here from Tejaswini. Here, what is the main difference between Android on Windows and in Linux kernel? It is just that when we talk about Android OS, it has a background which comes from Linux. So that is the only thing why we talk when we talk about the Android application, we always talk about Linux. I hope this is clear to you, Tejaswini. So how has Android evolved? Android has evolved from A to J. Here you can see the very first Android commercial version that was launched in the market was the Cupcake, then it was the Donut, then it was the Eclair, then we had the Froyo version, then it is the Gingerbread. So this is the version that is very much predominantly running on the Android enabled devices here. Then we had the Honeycomb, which was actually completely targeted for all the tablets, and then we have the ice cream sandwich, which majority of the devices are upgrading to, and the very last is the Jelly Bean. So this is the very latest Android version that is available in the market. Let me just quickly go to the questions here. Can you explain details about the general public licensing? So Lokesh Kumar, when we talk about general public licensing, it is just a mere licensing authority that we have for the Linux kernel based operating systems. And I have a question from Mahipal here. Why to use Android? Android is an operating system which is powering majority of the smartphones, and it has got a huge market capture in India as well as in the United States. So this is why we use Android. Ajay Joshi has a question here from it is just what is the difference between these various versions? The versioning schema that is being followed has nothing to do with these differences. It is just that they have continually upgraded from one version to another, which includes various additions and which gives you the various additions to the various versions. So it is just like a software which has evolved from 1.5 to 4.1. So let's move on. So I'll be talking about the various components in Android here. And here what I'll be doing is I'll be having a sample Facebook application. So to tell you all that I'll be relating these various components with the help of a Facebook application that you all might have downloaded onto your Android powered enabled handsets. So these are various screens that I have on the Facebook application, which is the login screen, the wall screen, the notifications, the friend requests, the messages, the photo galleries, etc. So I have a question here. Is Android a hardware dependent? Like every software is hardware dependent, so there are few libraries which interact with the hardware, so it is a hardware dependent thing. I have a question from Arun Kumar here. Is it possible to create the Android applications using Microsoft technology using C# instead of Java? Yes, it is possible, but that comes under the native development that we have in Android. It is possible to do that. So I'll be talking about the main building blocks of the application here. I have a question coming up from Siddharth. And what is the main difference between Android and iOS? These are completely two different platforms that one builds an application on. So if I'm building for an application for iOS, I have the support for iOS enabled handsets. And if I'm building an application for Android powered handsets, I have support for Android powered handsets. This is the difference between both. So let's quickly move on. Now I'll be talking about the main building blocks of the application here. So the main building blocks of any Android application are the activities, the intents, the broadcast receivers, the services, and the content providers. So I'll be taking all these components one by one here. Let me quickly tell you what is an activity. So if I talk about an activity here, so the activity is something which a user sees. It can be thought of as a screen or a web page. So much like the pages in a website, each screen in an application is an activity. So in this Facebook app that I have shown you here, the login screen is the login activity here, and this screen on the right is the newsfeed activity. So after you log in, if you're keying in your credentials correctly here, the activity you see is the news feeds activity, which you can see on the content, where you can see all the friends contents and the various feeds that are coming up from the various friends. Right? Then let's move ahead. So like every human being has a life cycle, and activity do have as a life cycle, which starts with the starting state and it ends with this destroyed state. In the meanwhile, we have various states wherein the activity is said to be in the running state, it is said to be in the pause state, and it is said to be in the stop state. So let me just quickly tell you about the various states of an activity here. Before I take you to the various states of an activity, let me just quickly give you a spotlight here. So when an activity starts, it is actually in the starting phase here. So when I have the various callbacks in Android, which says the on create and the on start method. After the various callbacks, the activity is set to be in the running state. When the activity is visible to the user, all right, then it is said to be in the running state. At any point of time when the activity, say you might have seen a dialog box coming up on top of the activity. So in this particular state, what happens is the activity is said to be in the pause state, as you can see here, because the activity is not completely visible it is partially visible to the user. So it is said to be in the pause state. As soon as the dialog box disappears from the front of the activity, it moves into the on resume state, and then again in the running state. At any point of time, I might have a call coming up on front of the activity. So when such a thing happens, we have the activity in the pause state, stop state here, and as soon as the call is finished, we again go to the on restart here, and then we have the activity running in the running state again. At any point of time when the system feels that it is running short of memory, it might destroy the activity all by itself, or we can forcefully destroy the activity by calling the finish method on the activity. So we'll be talking about all these things as to what is a finish method and what exactly is the life cycle of the Android activity as we'll be moving ahead with the course. Another important aspect of an Android application is the intents. So one can think of intents as verbs and objects. So before I move on to with the intents, any person having any doubts with the what exactly an activity is and during the activity lifecycle, you can just write on the chat window if you have any doubts, any queries with respect to activity, or what is the complete activity lifecycle here. I have a question from Rashmi here, which says, give an example of an activity. So Rashmi, I already showed you an example of an activity. The Facebook login activity that I showed you is an example of an activity. The newsfeed activity that I showed you is an example of an activity. I hope this is clear to you, Rashmi. So any person having any doubts with respect to activity, I hope this is clear to everyone. Ashish Arora has a question here. What is the what understand is the activity is a kind of view which is viewed by the user? That's correct, Ashish. That is the complete description of an activity. So Arun Kumar is asking me to go through the activity lifecycle once again. So Arun, as I told you, an activity is said to be in the running state, it is said to be in the pause state, or it is said to be in the destroyed state. So there are various callbacks that are followed that are actually given by the Android OS here. So when I say an activity is visible to the user, it is completely visible to the user, the activity is said to be in the running state. All right, and as soon as a dialog box comes in front of the activity, and the user removes back the dialog box, it is said to come back into the on pause state. It goes into the on pause state when the dialog appears, and as soon as the dialog disappears, it again goes into the running state. So this is how it is done. So Priyo has asked me a question here: why is activity required? So if you want to show anything to the user, or you have, like all the web pages have, you have to show something to the user. This is the purpose of an activity in Android. So that is this. Arun, is this clear to you? What is the Android lifecycle here? Lokesh has asked me, where does activity run in the architectural layer of Android? As I told you, the second layer that we have in the Android architecture is where we operate from. I hope this is clear to you, Lokesh. The PPD of this particular, all right, so let me, Sachin has asked me a question here: how can we pause the activity? It is not we who do the pausing, who do these destroying. We can destroy the activity manually, but it is not we who actually pause the activity. It is something which is governed by the Android system only. So let me quickly tell you about what is intents here. So one can think of intents as a verb and an object. So what exactly intent does is it contains a description of what you want to do. An example could be view something, call something, play something. So here I have an example of an intent here with respect to the Facebook application that we have. Here I have a gallery view, which you all might have seen on the Facebook application here. So once I click on this particular view and get this complete view in the expanded manner. So what I do here is, when I click here, I just fire an intent which asks me to view the photo that I have just clicked. So what one can think of intents like, if I have say 10 activities in the application and I want to start one activity from another, I need to fire an intent which tells me that this new activity has to be started from the last activity that I want to start it from. So intents are majorly the kind of communication passing that happens from one activity to another. I hope this is clear to everyone. What is intent? What exactly is the purpose of an intent in Android? You can just write on the chat window here. You can write on the chat window what is it. If you can just, I have a repeat here from Tejaswini. So I'll just do that. So an intent is like, when I have 10 activities in an application, I need some sort of inter-process communication between the various activities. So if I say this is a photo gallery activity, when I click on this photo gallery activity, I have to fire the photo view activity here, as you can see. So as soon as I click on this photo here, what I do is I do a view photo intent. I just fire a view photo intent, which will actually open up this complete activity in an expanded manner. So the intent is actually used for inter-process communication between the various activities. I hope this is clear to you all now. Tejaswini, is this clear to you? All right. Now I'll move ahead here. Then we have another faceless component in Android, which is the services. Suppose if I say we might have to do various things. We might have to do long running tasks in the background, and we have the various faceless components that run in the background. So one can think of this as services. So you might have always used a music player or a media player or any complete music player in your Android applications. So what you do is you actually give it a playlist. You supply it with a playlist, and you don't actually take care of what all are the various functionalities that are doing as to how much a song has got played. And then similarly, if the song has just got over, you have to play the next song. So all these kind of interactions with the media player are handled with the help of services. So one can think of them as faceless components that keep running in the background without having the user interaction with them. So, and like every activity have a life cycle, a service too has a life cycle. So when I talk about the life cycle of a service, it has a starting state, then it is said to be in the running state, and finally in the destroyed state. As you all might have seen here, a service does not have the pause state here. As you all could see in this particular sample here, a service does not have a pause state. The reason for that being, when we are not actually interacting with something, we don't have a user interface, we don't actually need a pause state here. I hope I'm clear with this, because I have done what I'm doing is I'm running some service in the background, and I'm not actually interacting with the service, so it cannot go into the on pause state. So this is the difference between the service lifecycle and the activity lifecycle. I have a question here from Prashant Kulkarni. Is the service destroyed manually or on its own? It all depends. If the system is running out of memory, it might destroy the service all by itself. But as soon as the task that I'm running with the help of a service is done, I automatically destroy the service. So you can think of a network download request. You might have seen on the Facebook application, you all might have seen that you have the complete list of news feeds that are coming up from the users. So it automatically gets refreshed. So this is an example of a network service. Let me just quickly go through the chat window here. So Dipti has a question here. What is service? I think I have cleared you all, told you all what exactly is a service. If you are doing some background tasks, if you're doing some extensive operations that need to be done in the background, then you'll be using a service for it. Himanshu has asked me a question. So if I kill an application, do the services associated with it gets killed automatically? Yes, Himanshu, that is true. All these services that you have associated with the application automatically get killed. Arya Ray has asked me a question here. Can service affect an activity? Yes, a service can affect an activity. So this is the complete example of a service that I have just shown you here. I have a poll question for all of you here. I talked about the runtime environment that is used by Android here. So can you all just take a look at the poll question here? So what is the runtime environment that is used by Android? Is it JVM or is it the DVM? So you can all cast your votes here on the chat window. Uh, uh, Arun Kumar has asked me a question here. What is the expansion of DVM? It stands as Dalvik Virtual Machine. And for JVM, it is the Java Virtual Machine. So I think I have just got majority of the votes. Majority of the people have voted for JVM, which is not right. The correct answer to it is the Dalvik virtual machine. As I told you, the Java virtual machine is used for the Java runtime applications. All right. When we talk about the DVM, it is just an optimized version of the JVM here, which is actually optimized for mobile application development here. I hope this is clear to all. So a service component that I just told you, is this component clear to all? So one can think of services as faceless components that run in the background. An example could be a music player which actually keeps continuously playing the various playlists without having the user intervention. So let's take an example of a Facebook application here. So the various news feeds that are coming by the various friends, the notifications about the friend requests are actually taken care of with the help of services, because the service keeps running in the background, and as soon as it finds a new notification on anything, it just pops you a message that this is the service that was running. All right. Then we have another interesting component here, which is the content providers. So let's understand what exactly is the content provider here. Here, one can think of a content provider as a central repository of data here. All right. Now I have a central repository of data and I need to have access to this data. Then I have a layer here, which is the content provider layer, which gives me access to the various data in the database with the help of the insert, the update, the delete, and the query method. And this is my actual application, which actually interacts with the content provider. Then the content provider in turn interact with the database. So it enables the sharing of data across applications. So if I'm having, say, so this is one application of mine. If I'm having, say, 10 applications, so all the 10 applications will be interacting with the content provider, and then the content provider will ultimately be interacting with the database. So the layer that is available to the application is the content providers. It provides the uniform APIs for querying, deleting, inserting, and updating. So Dipti has asked me a question here, what is an API? Actually, APIs, and when I talk about APIs, Dipti, it is the application programming interface. So these are the various methods that are available to an application programmer so that they can utilize them in their application. Santosh Reddy has asked me a question here, what do we use for DB connectivity? A content provider is an example of a DB connectivity in Android, wherein 10 applications, if they want, they can have access to the same data. So Priyo has asked me a question here, without content providers, we can't interact with the database. No, we can create our own database and we can interact with our own database without interacting with the content providers. It is just that when we need to have access to a central repository of data by the various applications. Suppose I have 10 applications in number and I just want a single database to be retrieved. So in that case, what I have is I have a layer sitting on top of the database, which actually does the interaction part for me. I hope this is clear to everyone. The content providers part, you can write on the chat window. Akhila has asked me a question here, does every application have different databases? It certainly depends on the developer who is building up the application. So if I say I have an application that makes use of the image gallery view, so in that particular case, I might have 10 applications that make use of the image gallery view. So I have a content provider given to me by the Android itself, which actually gives me access to the image gallery view. So in that case, I have a content provider. But if I'm building up an application which actually requires my own database that I'm building up, all right, so the database should not be accessible to the other applications. So in that particular case, I won't be needing a content provider for it. I hope this is clear to everyone. I totally I see many questions coming up. I'm actually I apologize for not answering all, because it is just that we are being flooded with questions. So I'm just picking up a few questions. But if you have any doubts, any queries, you can always write to us. You can write to us at support@edureka.in, and we'll be definitely responding to all the queries that you have. I have a question from Amrita here. Can you give examples for applications based on this context? I'm just covering an example for it. You can all just take a look at this example here. You might all have uploaded a photo into the Facebook using the Facebook applications. So what it does is, once I have clicked on the photo button here, as you can see on the screen here, when I click on this photo button here, I am actually shown a photo gallery view, which is driven by the content providers to me. So I actually use a content provider which gives me access to the photo gallery view. When I click on any particular photo from the photo gallery view, and I can just upload this particular photo onto the Facebook application using a service. So here what I have done is, I have clicked on the photo button, which fires an intent. All right. With the help of the intent, I'm querying the content provider here. This content provider opens up the gallery view for me, and then what I have is I have this photo selected to be uploaded onto the Facebook, and when I click on say select, and it automatically gets uploaded with the help of a service. So what I have covered here is I have covered an activity here. As you can see, this is an activity which holds the photo button. When I click on this activity, I fire an intent here, which actually queries the content provider and gives me the image gallery view. Once I select any image from the image gallery view, I just upload it onto the Facebook application using a service. I hope this example sums up the 4 components that I talked about: the activity, the intent, the content providers, and the service. I have a question here from Dipti here. Can we use Oracle database with Android? Android is actually shipped in with the SQLite database. So we always use the SQLite database in Android. Prashmi has asked me, how does the uploading part in a service on or an activity work? We'll all tell you about how this complete process works when we'll be actually taking the course. Complete course, we'll be telling you about how all these steps. Now there is another important feature of any Android application, which is the broadcast receiver. So one can think of a broadcast receiver as a dormant component here, which comes into action only when some intent for which it has registered occurs. So let me just quickly tell you an example of a broadcast receiver. So here I have an Android system. All right, this is the application that I have, and I have a broadcast receiver here. So a broadcast receiver has to register for the intents to observe here, as you can see by this arrow. And as soon as the particular instance occurs, what happens is I get a notification to the broadcast receiver that this event has occurred and you have to receive this event. An example of a broadcast receiver can be thought of, say, a battery low notification that all of you might see on your devices. As soon as the battery starts running low, it asks you that your battery is running low, you have to plug in the charger. So this is an example of the complete broadcast receivers that I have. So one can think of it as a subscriber publisher pattern here, where one is a subscriber and one is a publisher. So a battery low notification, a new friend notification, a news feed, a new message, call, etc. are some intents which bring the broadcast receiver into action, and it will send the appropriate notification to the user. I have a question from Rishabh Jan here. He says, I'm enrolling to this course and my new batch will be starting at 15th. As I'm in office, many part I missed out in the demo class. The basic class will be a repeat before 15th? Or you can always get this video downloaded, Rishabh. So you can also have the video downloaded. And when we'll be starting with the course, we'll be starting with the basic Java concepts, and then we'll be moving on to the Android concepts. So this is the complete pattern that we have here. Is this clear to you, Rishabh? So this is an example of a broadcast receiver that I have shown you here. So let me just recapture here. I have talked about the activity, the intent. I have talked about the services, the content providers. I have talked about the services, the content providers, and also the broadcast receivers. So if I reiterate, an activity is nothing but a mere screen that a user sees on the screen. It is very much like a web page here. Then I talked about the intents. In order to have intercommunication between the various activities, we have the use of intents, wherein we fire an intent from one activity to the other activity. I have a question coming up here from Shivam here, who says, what is the fees of the online classes? Shivam, we have the online classes for 6499, but we are actually providing 25% discount on this particular classes for all the people who will be registering just after the webinar ends. So all you need to do is any person who's actually interested in joining this course, all they need to do is to just go to Edureka, support@edureka.in, and just write an email that they want a 25% discount on this particular course, and then we'll be responding to those emails. I hope this is clear to you, Shivam. You can just write on the chat window. All right. So I talked about intents when we have, say, 10 activities in an application and we need some sort of intercommunication between the various activities. Then we fire an intent from the calling activity to the activity which has to be called. So this is an example of an intent. Then I talked about the services. The services are nothing but faceless components that keep running in the background. Please don't put in your queries right now, because I'm just recapturing it, and I'll take all your queries one by one after that. So when I talk about services, can be thought of as faceless components here, which keep running in the background. So when I talk about a service, I can think of a media player here, wherein I just pass in a playlist to the media player, and then the automatic shuffling of the songs and the various songs, say one song finishes, the next has to start, are all managed by the service. Then I talked about the content providers. Content providers are nothing but an access to the central repository of data. Suppose I have 20 applications that are running on the device. So all my 20 applications might need to have access to the photo gallery, to the contacts of the application of the complete device. So in this particular case, what I have is I have a central repository of the data, which is actually given to me with the help of the content providers. So if I want to fetch all the contents, fetch the photo galleries and all, then I can use the content providers and get my work done. Then I talked about the broadcast receivers, which are nothing but system notifications. When I talk about system notifications, you might also have seen a battery low notification coming on your devices, or say I have changed my time zone. I have moved in from, say, GMT plus 5:30 to I have, say, moved to UTC time zone. So in that particular case, these are all the notifications that I have here. Now I'll just quickly take a look at the questions that have been asked. Ankur Agrawal says, I have no idea about Java language. Ankur, what we'll be doing is we'll be covering the basics from Java. As I showed you in the course page, we'll be actually covering the basics Java, and then we'll be moving into the Android application development. So I just see a few of the queries here. I have a question from Lokesh here. If I join the Android course, whether I'll be trained to make Android applications practically? Lokesh, what we have is we have a 6 weeks course for Android application development, wherein every week you'll be having classes, and we'll be teaching you the various concepts in Android. By the end of 6 weeks, we'll be helping you out and making our own project all by yourself. All right, and as you'll be making the project, you'll also gain practical knowledge about it. And during the course, we have the various assignments that you people have to take care of. So it is like a kind of learning for you all, and we also get informed as to whether a student is sincerely doing his work or not. I have a question from Supriyo here. Is Android dependent on Java? It is just the programming language that is used by Android application development, Supriyo. All right, now let's move ahead. Now what I'll be doing is I'll be telling you how you'll be building your very first Android applications. So in order to build your very first Android application here, all you need to do is, first you need to download the plugin for Eclipse here, because Eclipse is the IDE that is used by Android application development here. So all you need to do is go to www.eclipse.org/downloads here. Under the download section, you'll see the Eclipse IDE here, and then what you can do is you can download the version that you want as per the requirements of your machine. So if it is a 64-bit machine or is it a 32-bit machine, you can download the appropriate version from here. After you get the Eclipse downloaded, you need to have a Java JDK installed onto your machine. I have a question from Ipshita here. She says, what is the full form of IDE? It is the integrated development environment. So if we are developing something onto the device, for the Android application. Then we have the IDE for it, which gives us the complete development environment that we can run on. I hope this is clear to everyone. What is meant by the IDE, which I am referring to. I have a question from Ashish Kumar. He says, is there similarities between service and broadcast receivers since both run in the background? Ashish, there are differences between a broadcast receiver and a service. When I talk about a broadcast receiver, it actually registers for the event, and it is actually fired only when the event occurs. While in case of a service, what I have is I have a service which actually take care of the background processes. So it keeps running. So that is the difference between a broadcast receiver and a service, because broadcast receiver comes into existence only when the event is fired, which is not the case with the services. So this is here you can download the Eclipse IDE from. Then what you need to do is you also need to have the Java JDK here, which you can download from www.oracle.com/technetwork Java SE downloads index. And here you can download the appropriate version of the Java here. Once I click on this here, it will redirect me to the download page here. Sumit is asking me a question here. What is Eclipse? Sumit, Eclipse is the actually platform wherein you will be doing your coding, or you will be writing your code and then you can run your applications. If I click on accept license agreement, and I can download the appropriate version that I need depending upon the machine that I have. Once you have got the Java JDK downloaded, then you also need to have the Android SDK. So in order to download the Android SDK, you can go to developer.android.com/SDK, and here you can download the executable file. Once you are done with all this, I have a question coming up from here. I have a question coming up from coding will be in Java. Yes, coding, Shubham here, he says coding will be in Java. Yes, Shubham, coding will be in Java. Can we use NetBeans instead of Eclipse is the question from Rakesh. We can do that, Rakesh, but it is just that the Eclipse is more optimized for Android application development, because you can get all the plugins that are needed for Android application development in the Eclipse itself. Prakash B is asking me a question here. What is SDK? Prakash B, SDK is the standard development kit. When we talk about Android application development, we also need to have some development kit which actually houses the various Android APIs, not the Java ones. It is the Android APIs. For that, we need to have the SDK. All right, then after the installation, what we have to is we need to have the plugin. This is the plugin that I was talking about, which is actually readily embeddable in Eclipse IDE. So in order to just install this Eclipse, all you need to go do is, after installing IDE here you have the help window. Here you can click on install new software, and then you can go on to add. Just key in the repository here. I'll just key in here. You all need to just key in this particular repository which is found, it adds to, and just go to Eclipse, and here you can just, it is not allowing me to import this particular because it is already present in my Eclipse IDE. So once you'll be actually doing it, you'll get it as you can so that you can install it. So if I go on to file, I go on to new Android application project. Now it is asking me a variety of things. It is asking for an application name. I'll say sample. I'll say Edureka. As soon as I do that, it automatically generates the project name here. Then we have the com.example.sample Edureka. It is the package naming. All of you who might be familiar with Java, if I talk about package naming, it is just grouping the various applications into a single category. And I click on next here, or missed. Here you have two options here. One is the build SDK and minimum SDK required. So when I talk about the build SDK, the optimum level that you should use is the 2.2 build level here, and then the minimum required you can keep it as 2.2, and then you click on next here. It gives you the various images that you want to use your application. I'll choose none. I click on next. It says create an activity, which says blank activity. I'll create a blank activity here. It asks me for the activity name. I'll just name it as main activity. I'll keep the name unchanged here, and I do a finish here. As soon as I do a finish here, you can see I'll be having the sample Edureka here, which gets generated automatically. Ipshita has asked me a question, what is ADT? It stands for the ADT are the plugins that are used in Android. So ADT is something which is Android development tutorials and all, which we can use. All right, now once I have done with this particular example here, as you can see, I have a source folder. Under this we have the com.example.simple Edureka, and then under that we have the main activity. I click on the main activity. Here you can see, because I told you every user interface is an activity in Android, so it extends from the activity class here, and we have the on create and the on create options menu. In the on create we have the on create is set to be when the activity is set to be in the running state. It is the very first method that gets called. So I have a set content view here, which gives me the user interface for the activity. I'll just show you where this user interface is. Here you can see on the graphical representation. I'll just expand it a little. I'll just zoom it up. Here you can see what I have done is I have just simply tried to output hello world onto the Android application. So once I do that, I go to here, I do a run as, do a run as Android application, and now it will run this application onto the emulator that I have. In the meanwhile, if you want, I can just take a look at the various queries. Rupchand has asked me a question in the meanwhile. Here he asked me difference between the SDK and the plugin of Android. So the difference between the plugin and the SDK is the plugin is something which is needed by Eclipse in order to fetch all the Android libraries, and the SDK is the complete development kit that we have for the Android. I hope this is clear to you, Rupchand. Ipshita has asked me a question, difference between an emulator and a simulator. An emulator is something which actually emulates the exact device, and simulator is something which does not completely control all the features that are available on the device. Tejaswini has asked me a question, can we get flavors of Android SDK? It is just that we have various SDKs that we can build our applications on, Tejaswini. So once we start building applications, we can choose anyone, but when we are doing it, then we also need to have the optimum versions that are available in the market, because that is the place where we are telling the project. So once I do a run here, as you can see here, this is the hello world application. This is the very basic sample application, hello world application that I've just showed you all. So Santosh Reddy has asked me a question, what is Logcat here? Logcat is just merely some example. It is merely the device monitoring that you have here. So if I click on the Logcat here, you can see all the processes that are going on with the help of the simulator. I hope this is clear to you, Santosh. If people are not clear with an emulator is something which exactly emulates the exact device. So if I'm not having the device with me, I can still run my applications on the emulator. Rupchand has asked me, is integrate necessary to download plugin? Internet, yes, Rupchand, it is internet, right, right. Rupchand, internet is necessary to download the plugins. Lokesh has asked me a question here, where do you use XML in Android application development? When we use the XML in Android application development when we actually display the activity. So here you can see this is an activity which is driven by an XML here. Here, Ipshana has asked me a question here, is logcat showing an error? I'll just see if logcat is showing me an error. It keeps going on. It keeps notifying to the user what all is happening. So it is not an error, it is just an exception, I think. Let me just see. It is just a warning, Ipshita. Lokesh is saying me, do we need to program in XML also? No, we don't actually program it in XML. We program it with the help of the Java classes or say the various activity classes. So this is the all that we have for today's class here, and this is the class that actually gives you an overview of what exactly Android is, and we also told you about how you'll be building a sample Hello World application here. So this is all about what we have to cover today. So this is all that we have for today's session. I just request you all, because we'll be having a survey at the end of this webinar, just cast all your findings that you have for this particular webinar, and once you have done that, you'll be receiving all those people who have actually casted their reports onto the survey will be getting the video sessions that we have covered today. So it is very necessary for all of you to actually cast your votes onto the survey report that we have coming up. Tarun is asking me a question, can we download this session later, or as I missed some of part of this? I told you, Tarun, we'll be sharing the video content with you once you'll be filling up the survey that comes up at the end of this complete webinar. So as all the people who will be filling up the survey will be getting these videos onto their email accounts. Is this clear to everyone? Siddharth is asking me a question, are all the apps available in Play Store developed in this way? Yes, Siddharth, we actually do application development like this only. I hope this is clear to everyone. So if you have any questions, any queries with respect to the session that we have covered today, you can just try it on the chat window. So just to wind up this course, I want to tell you all that our course is completely online, and the next batch that we have is the batch which starts from 15th of September. We'll be offering 25% discount to all those students who will be just logging in after the webinar ends, and all they need to do is just send us an email that they are interested for the 25% off on this particular course. Only this class is free. So all of you who have attended this class might have gained some insight into what all we have for you in store for all of you to take advantages of. So this is the complete session that we have. So just remember that you all have to fill in the survey, and then you can register yourself for the classes that is starting from September 15th.